There are a lot of big stories coming out of Ottawa, which are impacting many Canadians. To talk about some of the hot button issues is Lethbridge MP Rachael Thomas joining us here in Lethbridge. Rachael, thanks again for joining us here on Bridge City News.
Thank you, Hal. It's totally my pleasure to be here.
Now, one of the biggest stories a lot of Canadians are talking about is the huge Freedom Convoy making its way to Ottawa. Bridge City News, in fact, will be there this weekend as we interview a lot of the truckers and the MPs who are supporting this rally. Now, truckers who are participating saying the rally isn't just about the vaccine mandate, but all of the mandates, and they're fighting for our freedoms. Now, you, and as I mentioned, a number of Conservative MPs are supporting the truckers in this endeavor. Why is that?
Absolutely, Hal. I stand with the men and women of this country who are joining as a unified body of people standing up for the rights and freedoms of Canadians. Look, at the end of the day, this is a group of individuals who are wanting to infuse hope. They're wanting to stand for what's right. They're wanting to draw attention to mandates that are causing significant harm, not only to our mental health, our physical health, but also to our ability to earn a livelihood, et cetera. And then, of course, as truckers, they're taking a stand for you and for me, for all Canadians, in the sense that this is going to have the mandate is having and will continue to have a huge impact on supply chain, our ability to be able to go to the grocery store and purchase, groceries for our refrigerator at home, or being able to put clothes on our back or other household items that we rely on. So these are individuals who are passionate about what it is to be Canadian, true north, strong and free, and they're advocating for all of us.
Now, what are you anticipating is actually going to occur once all of the truckers, thousands upon thousands of truckers converging in Ottawa? I've worked in Ottawa as well in the past. Parking is kind of premium. It's kind of limited around Parliament Hill there.
Well, certainly it's going to be a very congested downtown core. And, it's going to be up to the powers that be to sort that out. But certainly there is this group of dedicated men and women who are coming to town, and it is their right to peacefully assemble and peacefully protest, and they're laying hold of that and they're taking action.
Now, Rachael, the National Post had a great story on the ongoing and unnecessary erosion of Canadian civil liberties. How did we get to this point, and can the erosion be reversed?
Yeah, it is sad. We're about 2 years in now, from the time that we were first told to isolate, and that the government was going to figure this out. And we were told it was only going to be a couple of weeks, and then maybe a couple of months, and then eventually we were told, well, if a certain percentage of the population is vaccinated, then we can return back to normal. And then that changed again, and the goalposts continue to move. And at the end of the day, I think Canadians are feeling rightly frustrated. And I think, trusting government and the mandates is declining. And so some of those mandates, some of those infringements would be, travel. So the fact that you have to test before you leave the country, you have to test before you come back to the country, and then you might have to test even upon arrival once again. And and a rapid antigen test isn't acceptable. It has to be a PCR test. And there's just one blockade after another, one hurdle after another that we have to overcome, in order to enjoy our civil liberty, which is, of course, movement. Not to mention, you can't even get on an airplane to begin with if you're not vaccinated. This is an infringement on our rights. I could go on and on. The right to assemble, our religious rights, the right to be able to earn a livelihood. All of these things are being infringed upon by the government. And ultimately, coming forward, there will be cases, there already are cases, where the government will have to demonstrate, they will have to demonstrate that this is justifiable. I'm not convinced they'll be able to do that.
And it's not sure yet if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will be able to meet with any of the truckers. He tweeted that he's gone into isolation. He came into contact with somebody who has COVID-19. He tested negative, but he's going to self-isolate and work from home for 5 days. What are your thoughts on that? Is this maybe Trudeau just avoiding the potential of meeting with the truckers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is Trudeau trying to avoid accountability. The health measures don't require him to stay home for 5 days and isolate. They don't require that. He made that up. So this is nothing more than a ploy that the Prime Minister is engaging in order to avoid any sort of accountability and having to answer for the decisions that he has made to the detriment of this country.
Rachel, a number of media outlets, including us right here at Bridge City News, have reported that customers are seeing bare shelves and product shortages at grocery stores, but fortunately retailers say there's no food shortage just yet. Do you think it'll actually come to that?
Hal, I think if the prime minister doesn't reverse course, it really could come to that. We have, due to the vaccine mandate on truckers, we have 18,000 of these service workers, truckers, who've been pulled from their jobs. They are not able to cross that border any longer. That has a devastating effect on our supply chains. I'm speaking with individuals here within the Lethbridge riding who are telling me that it is having an impact on their businesses, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel. I'm speaking with a number of our feedlot owners who are responsible for, making sure their cattle have food to consume, and they're facing shortages on that front. So the impact is drastic already, and we're only a week in. And so you can imagine how grave the effects of this will be in 2, 3, 4 weeks from now.
The Trudeau Liberals have discussed more money coming off of our checks to go towards CPP, and now there's another carbon tax hike coming in April, around 20%. Rachel, it's getting very, very expensive to be a Canadian.
Absolutely. I'm speaking with constituents each and every day over the phone, by email. They're coming into my office, and they have significant concerns around the cost of living. They're watching their home heating bills skyrocket. And what's particularly troubling is for those individuals who are on a fixed income, whether it's seniors or those who live with a disability. There's also those who are just vulnerable because their income isn't great and they're living paycheck to paycheck. These individuals are suffering. So the reality is the vast majority of Canadians are suffering at the hands of Trudeau and the decisions that he's making. And so he's choosing to increase taxes over and over and over again. He's just finding new and creative ways to do it and calling them by different names. But it all results in an increased cost of living, and it's ultimately harming Canadians. I guess I would say this: when Canadians are struggling the most, Trudeau seems to make it his top priority to find new and inventive ways to continue to punish them. That's wrong. That's not leadership.
Stats Canada said inflation is at its highest point in over 3 decades at around 4.8%. In fact, a new poll says around 60% of Canadians are having a real tough time, buying food, making ends meet each month. Now, if the Conservatives were in power in government, how would you make life more affordable for Canadians?
hmm It's a fair question, Hal. You're absolutely right. Canadians really are having a difficult time making ends meet, whether it's putting food on their table or paying their home heating bill or being able to afford a home. Canadians are struggling, and they're looking for answers. And the only answer that Trudeau is offering them is just to spend more money. But as he's spending more money, he's actually increasing the cost of living for Canadians. So the more he spends, the more we pay. That's the way that it works, and it's harmful. So if Conservatives were to form government, there's a few things that we would do very differently. One, stop printing money. Two, spend within your means. Three, don't spend on things that are not necessary. You have to rein it in. A part of governing, a part of leadership is making difficult decisions. There's no way that you can appease everyone, but you do have to be responsible. You do have to try to serve the betterment of the country. You do have to, pay attention to the well-being of Canadians and make sure that you're leading the country down a pathway toward economic stability and growth. And right now, we're just not seeing that by Prime Minister Trudeau. And so a Conservative government would definitely make that our priority.
Even the parliamentary budget officer says the Liberals' planned stimulus spending may not be necessary. So, Rachel, let me ask you, bottom line, why do you think the Trudeau Liberals keep spending and spending?
Well, I think it's knowing that, when a government spends a lot of money, they can increase the dependency that people have on government. And when people are dependent on the government, perhaps they're more likely to vote for them. Instead, what we should be doing is celebrating Canadians for who they are, for the incredible talent and ability that they possess. the gifts that they're able to, invest in our country in order to help it thrive. I mean, Canadians are the problem solvers. They are the solution makers. They are the wealth generators that this country needs. We don't need more government. We need smaller government. We need to embrace, celebrate, and empower the Canadian people.
The Conservatives and NDP are demanding an emergency committee meeting to review the sale of a Chinese business takeover of a Canadian lithium company. Tell me more about that.
Sure, Hal. I think ultimately what's happened here is that, the Liberal government has failed to do diligence. In other words, they've neglected to do a thorough review process of this acquisition. And it's not just me that's saying this, it's the experts that have reviewed this process, and they're saying this. They're saying that due diligence was not followed. They're saying that, this is potentially a threat to our national security, that it wasn't taken seriously before this acquisition was completed. And so it's difficult to hear that. It's actually very angering to hear that, because a leader's primary responsibility, any prime minister, no matter what party they belong to, any prime minister, their first responsibility is to look after the safety and security of Canadians, the well-being of this country. And Trudeau, his government, his cabinet ministers neglected to do that in this scenario.
As Canada's shipbuilding strategy continues to pile up billions of extra taxpayers' dollars, now Public Services and Procurement Canada is quietly seeking what it calls influencers to push out messages that the program and the project was a huge success. It'll see the construction of new vessels for the Canadian Navy and Coast Guard. Rachel, those costs have simply skyrocketed.
Yeah, Hal, it's quite something, isn't it? The project was originally supposed to cost $26 billion. Now it's at $77 billion, and the number continues to grow day by day. It is an epic failure. And the only one that has to own that is Mr. Trudeau, the Prime Minister of this country, and his cabinet ministers around the table with him. There were just very poor leadership decisions made in this scenario. Look, if a government is doing the job that it should be doing, it doesn't need to spend a ton of money for PR firms and storytellers and individuals who are going to use their social media platforms in order to try to, boost this government and make them look good. Ultimately, Trudeau was, he's attempting to pay for a cover up of his mistakes, and he's been caught, which is a good thing.
The Foothills CPC Electoral District Association held a meeting on January 22nd, and a motion was passed by the board formally requesting National Council and party leadership to hold a leadership review by June the 15th. Now, the Foothills riding, as you may know, is one of the top 10 highest memberships of the Conservative Party with over 2,000 members. Rachel, will we see a leadership review of your leader, Erin O'Toole, before mid-June? And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, Hal, again, fair question. There's been a number of electoral district associations that have passed this similar motion calling for a review of Mr. O'Toole's leadership. And they would like to see it done sooner rather than later. I think, of course, the goal there is that we would be prepared when an election is called, which we know with a minority government in place, there really could be an election in as early as, 18 months from now and as far out as 4 years from now. So you really do have to be positioned well. Right now, our party is situated in such a way that our leadership review should take place in August 2023. And so these EDAs are coming forward and they're saying, wait a minute, we actually want this review to take place sooner. We want to make sure that the grassroots members have a voice and that, we've made this decision before going into an election or staring it in the face. It's a fair point. It's a fair point. You should want this question settled as soon as possible. Do the members want Erin O'Toole to continue to be a leader of the party, or do the members prefer to have a leadership race and choose a new person to lead the party? We've always prided ourselves in giving voice to the members and allowing them to make these decisions and guide us forward. And so it does seem appropriate then to continue in that regard. We should give members a voice, and ultimately it will be their say in terms of, number one, whether or not we do have a leadership review, as soon as June, And number two, it'll be up to the members to decide, whether or not Aaron O'Toole continues at the helm.
Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Hal. Good to be with you.